The following program is produced and funded by the Alvin Jones Communications Group.
Hello, I'm Angela Harris. I am thrilled to be your host for this edition of Women's Business Report. In the 7 seasons since its inception, Women's Business Report has profiled women in business and showcased some outstanding accomplishments of women in entrepreneurial, and leadership roles across corporate, private-owned, and nonprofit organizations of all sizes. As of 2021, the U.S. has 12.3 million women-owned businesses. These women-owned businesses generate $1.8 trillion a year. 40% of businesses are owned by women. Businesses founded by women earn 2 times the amount per dollar invested than those founded by men and generate 10% more revenue over a 5-year period. It's also a fact that companies with diverse leadership teams are more innovative and more financially successful than those without. Multiple recent surveys show that throughout the pandemic, women have made important gains in representation, most notably in leadership. However, these gains have come at the cost of women reporting burnout and exhaustion, increasingly more so than men. But despite the added pressure, women continue to rise as stronger and more effective leaders, especially in the areas of supporting their teams to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So it's appropriate that this edition of Women's Business Report is sponsored by Linked Inclusion Corporation. In the next half hour, we will spotlight the work of dynamic professionals, including Dr. Jen Welter, Dr. Meyer Rockeymoore Cummings, and international recording artist Sylver Logan Sharp.
Exclusion hurts. Exclusion is an instance of leaving something or someone out. 83% of people of color cover up a dimension of their identity at work. 46% of LGBTQ workers say that they are closeted at work. Across all levels of education, persons with a disability are much less likely to be employed than are their counterparts with no disability. 40% of employees feel physically and emotionally isolated in the workplace. Of employees who experience bias and prejudice at work, 44% withhold ideas and solutions. How do we solve for X? Linked Inclusion is resetting diversity, equity, and inclusion. We're adding wellness, mental, physical, and emotional, to heal the trauma of exclusion. Linked Inclusion is a place for people who face exclusion. We are stronger, faster, smarter together. Linked Inclusion is professional social change management. We're changing our world with DEI plus wellness. Powered by proprietary technology, founded by a person of color with diverse leadership. Resources for better outcomes, networking for good, pride for authenticity. DEI plus wellness, everyone is welcome. Join us on linkedInclusion.us. Amplify your voice. We see you.
Women in sports face unique challenges. At the coaching level, the challenges are amplified. Women's teams don't always receive equal funding. There's controversy in uniforms and disparities in equipment, fans, community support, and more. The exclusion of women in sports can lead to psychological and emotional issues. Our next feature is an inspiring example of changing the game. Women's Business Report had an opportunity to catch up with its alumna, Dr. Jen Welter, the first female to coach in the NFL. You have achieved amazing milestones, and you have broken barriers, broken the glass ceiling. You have played in the arguably most male-dominated sports that there is. Tell me what that's like.
Well, first of all, let's just get this out of the way. Though there are more men, it does not mean that we say that they dominate. They've just had more opportunities, and that's what's important, right? Every time we get women and girls on the football field, it's a win, right? Before they even play, it's a win, because they call this the final frontier for women in sports. So to me, I took that as a challenge. I took it to heart. Why is it America's game, but it's the one only played by, not even half of America. It's only open to half of the population. So if we in America say that this is our game, why wouldn't we want everybody to have the opportunity to decide if they want to play? It's not for every girl, it's not for every boy, it's not for everyone. But everyone should have the opportunity in this sport and in life to try it and decide if it's for them. That's what's important. So with these girls and with women, I always say, like, anytime you get on this field, it's a win, because we've taken one of those places and spaces that were taboo out of that, you can't category. And we've said you can with great coaching, right? And you can with opportunity. And so in my own career, that's what I always said. Like, you have to be prepared to step up to every challenge, because the things that I've done weren't even things you could dream about when I started playing.
In honor of literally shutting out the world, if you were to go back into, Madden 20 and Madden 21, and you played shutdown defense, you would be playing my team. So I was the first female to be a head coach in Madden, and it's team shutdown. If they don't score, they can't win.
And so that's what I still constantly work on, is being prepared to be able to step up to any new challenges. And I want to take that and pay it forward in any of the girls that we then bring on the field. It's like, you can win on the field. I've won a lot, right? Won a lot of rings. But I had to believe that every time I stepped on the field, it was a win, because it was taking some of those taboos away.
You've studied psychology, so you uniquely understand that exclusion has an impact. When girls are excluded, it can have an impact emotionally, psychologically. It can lead to trauma. So what would you say is the biggest thing that we can do to help solve for that trauma?
Well, let's look at it this way. We tell kids all the time, boys and girls, you can do anything you want to do. You can be anyone you want to be. Oh, except for that. So some of your dreams are more valid than others, and some of these things are okay, but others aren't, simply because of whether it's your gender or the color of your skin or where you came from. And anytime you see that, it takes a little bit of the power out of telling someone they can do anything. Because you gave an asterisk to it, right? Like, you just asterisked me to death. You can do anything except this, except this, except this, except this. Please read the following subtitles. Well, then I really can't be or do anything. I can do certain things if I fit in your box, right? And so every time we take one of those little asterisks out of the equation, we give them permission to be a little bigger, to be a little bolder, to try something new. And the way that we have to do it, like, I even laugh in some of my drills. I tell the kids, I'm like, all right, do you want to get really good? They're like, yes. Like, great, we've got to get really ugly. And they're like, what? Like, oh yeah, it takes get really ugly to get really good. So I want you to have permission to be super awkward right now. And that makes it okay to stretch yourself and to try something else. But we have such a society right now that's based on instant gratification and fear of repercussions of not being perfect. So what do? We give them permission to try things. We want to give permission to laugh, try, to get ugly, to get uncomfortable, and to realize that you then get to see where you fit and where you might want to invest time to get better. So it's really important to be intentional about not just telling kids that they can be anything, but bringing them into those situations where they might have heard they could do anything, but then what they saw was anything except that. And every time we can take that away, that takes away one of those question marks that pulls from your psyche. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're a trailblazer
you are the model. There was no model before you. So tell me what that's like. You're creating the model.
But I literally tell people who like to romanticize the word trailblazer, I'm like, oh, please don't. All trailblazer means is that you were the one who saw the woods and believed you had to get to the other side. And so when there was no map, you just kind of stumbled your way through, which means you stepped on the big rock. You went into the, you can't go that way. You turn back around, you got a branch here, and then you say, oh, that wasn't cute. Like, I gotta cut this down. And so it's ugly and it's awkward and it's lonely because first inherently means only. But when it's done, the beauty is that once it's been done, it can't be undone. Now it can be built upon, but that's what you want. You need a first to get a second and a third and a fourth, and then there's strength in numbers. But being the one is tough because at that time, the entire narrative surrounding whatever conversation that is, whether it's women coaching men or something like it rests on your shoulders because it's a sample size of one. And so that's hard. But the power is when you see girls like these who get to grow up with it being a possibility, because representation is so important, right? I need to see somebody who looks like me or who came where I'm from or acts like me or reminds me of me doing it. So it gives me permission to dream about it and then set goals around it. So that's where I always say it's a hard path, and where I fortify myself to keep going forward is for those that it clears the way for. And that's the power that you have to have, is this belief that your path isn't just yours. You're doing it for something bigger than yourself. Because if it's just me wandering around, that's lonely and that's scary.
Right.
But when it becomes about something bigger, that's where we all find our purpose and calling, right? We say football, family, and faith. Those are all about things that are bigger than us. And I think that's what you have to remind yourself of when you're first, because that's only.
If you're a woman in business and you'd like to be featured on Women's Business Report, email us at info@womensbusinessreport.com. Welcome back to Women's Business Report. Dr. Maya Rockeymoore Cummings is the founder and CEO at Global Policy Solutions, a Washington, D.C. based policy firm that makes policy work for people and their environments. Dr. Rockeymoore Cummings' area of expertise includes health, social insurance, income security, education, women's issues, and youth civic participation. She is the author of the Political Action Handbook, a how-to guide for the hip-hop generation, and is co-editor of Strengthening Community, Social Insurance in a Diverse America, among many other articles and chapters. You're an alum, so welcome back to Women's Business Report.
It's a pleasure to be on again.
Well, let me just first congratulate you by your senior appointment at Brookings Institution. Tell us about that. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'll be a non-resident senior fellow at Brookings, and what that means is that I get to still live in Baltimore even though I'll be doing work that's important for the nation and the world. It's in the Metropolitan Policy program at Brookings, which means that I'll be focusing on policies that are important to cities like Baltimore and DC and New York and places across the country. we still have a lot of work to do in our country in terms of making sure that we have livable places where everyone has an opportunity to not just survive but to thrive. And I am dedicated, and I've dedicated my career to making sure I am pursuing the policy options and solutions that can make a difference in our community.
Right. Well, as a fellow Baltimorean, I'm particularly interested in Baltimore, so congratulations, and I know you're going to be great there.
Thank you so much.
So we're talking about, our segment today is sponsored by Linked Inclusion, and so naturally we're talking about inclusion, and we're talking about being a woman entrepreneur and some of the challenges and thrills that we get as women entrepreneurs. So why do you think it's important for women to be entrepreneurs?
I think it's important for women to be able to show their skills and the diversity of their skills in all kinds of ways, and entrepreneurship and business is one of them. Women don't just belong in the kitchen. We can run multi-million-dollar businesses too.
Yes, we can.
And be successful beyond, society's wildest imaginations for us. And so with that, I am just encouraged. We did a study a couple of years ago about entrepreneurship. And women in general, but Black women especially, have been at the forefront of creating businesses like you wouldn't believe following the 2008 global economic crisis. We decided that we were going to go into business for ourselves and try our hands at it. And yet, when you look at the statistics, African American women and Latina women have a large number of businesses, but the fewest number of us have employees. So we're mostly sole proprietors, which means that we've got work to do to make sure that we're supporting women business owners, that we're getting the access to capital that we need, that we have the other supports that we need in order to not just create a business, but to actually have a successful business.
What advice do you give to any woman, young woman, older woman, at any age? Because we can start businesses at any age. So what advice do you give to women when they try to get into business, or they start to get into business and they start to face exclusion, or that glass ceiling that still unfortunately exists? What advice do you give to women about those challenges?
So network. Market. People need to know who you are, whether that's because you're working the networks or you're putting yourself out there in terms of letting people know about your business. And so, the challenges are going to come because we live in a patriarchal world, one in which, men seem to have it easier when it comes to these things like business creation and success. And so that means that, we have to rely on each other sometimes because, we've got more women in positions of power, or procurement and other opportunities to, get hired. But it also means that we have to, go the extra mile to make sure that people know that we're here. And I would also add, get help. There is the Small Business Administration runs, women-focused business centers that provide the support we need for, marketing plans, for business plans, you name loans. Right. You name it, it's available out there. And so there's nothing wrong with saying that you need help. When I started my business, I went to a small business, women's small business center. And so, get the help that you need when you need it.
Great. Can you speak a little bit about the wellness aspect? Because as women, we're always the caretakers. We're doing so much. We do so much more. And so it has an effect on us. And so what about the wellness aspect of being a woman in business? Can you speak to that?
So I am so glad that you mentioned that, because I think that we think of everyone except ourselves first. And especially when you're running a business, and a business with employees,
right.
That, I know that I thought, okay, I've got now all these families that I'm responsible for. So in addition to my spouse and, my familial obligations at home, I felt like, okay, I have employees that have families too. I got to make sure that this is working. And so, what ends up happening is you put yourself last. And for me, I gained weight. I think I had levels of, stress that I didn't need. And at the end of the day, it's like what they say when you get on the airplane. If you're not getting your oxygen first, nothing's going to work.
Exactly.
Especially when there's a crash. Yeah. And so, women need to understand that putting yourself first is actually not selfish. is necessary for business success.
Well, we thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for coming back and being a guest, a repeat guest on Women's Business Report. Thank you so much.
It's been delightful. Thank you.
It's been delightful talking to you as well. If you're a woman in business and you'd like to be featured on Women's Business Report, email us at info@womensbusinessreport.com.
Native Americans are the indigenous people of the United States. Within a few generations, the continents of the Americas were virtually emptied of their native inhabitants. A race was excluded. An entire race excluded. The current population of Native Americans is 6.9 million. That's 2% of the United States. Linked Inclusion is here. Join us at linkedinclusion.us. We see you.
Our final feature examines the state of women in the music industry. According to data collected from the latest USC Annenberg Inclusion Survey, the music industry is yet another industry where women are grossly underrepresented and underpaid. Female artists, creatives, producers, and label executives are disproportionately missing. Among artists, women make up just 21.7% of the industry. Songwriters are just 12.3%, and women producers are just 2.1%. During the time of the study, women accounted for just 10.4% of Grammy nominees. And when it comes to achieving the very top executive level, it's still pretty lonely at the top for Sylvia Rohn, the most influential female record executive, who was named chairman and CEO at Epic Records in 2019. Our next feature is a truly dynamic female entrepreneur who is holding her own as a record label CEO, singer, songwriter, producer, performer, and in her spare time, she is the CEO and designer of her own jewelry label called Sylver. This is Sylver Logan Sharp.
Hello, Women's Business Report, and thank you so much for having me. I am Sylver Logan Sharp, singer, songwriter, producer, entrepreneur, jewelry designer, dog mom, and creative, and that's all I'm claiming. Now, it's no joke to be in the business of being in business. However, it is a blessing to be a woman of color in the United States of America and beyond, and a CEO and an executive artist all at the same time. Now, it's not for the faint of heart. The challenges are endless, the obstacles are inevitable, but the victories are amazing. Now, some things have changed and modified and adjusted. However, we still live in a male-dominated society, and not that men running things is a problem, but the problem is suggesting that women cannot. See how that's a problem? Now, for many years, I was the only girl in the band. I was the creative one in the bunch. And I wish that we learned earlier as young people to just trust it, because it means something on the journey ahead. Now, I've been very, very fortunate and blessed to be nurtured by women who are not only smart, but who also are talented and kind of set the tone in many ways. You know, it meant you had to be a little bit better than just good, just to contend. Now, I had to grow up and grow some tough skin and not let that tarnish my sensitive and compassionate side, especially when doing business. I was blessed to have a family, and I'm fortunate enough to never believe that I couldn't move forward because of being a woman. I didn't grow up with that kind of energy, and I don't walk with it now. However, I did learn that being a woman in the world held a different level of responsibility, no matter what your career choice is. Now, I'm proud to say that the lineage of the women that I come from is rearing strong in my current journey of being a CEO of Sylver handcrafted jewelry, the CEO of Redhead Productions, my production company, the host and creator of our TV streaming show, Feel Better Friday, and many other wonderful things that are on the horizon. Most of the songs that I've written or co-written or had the pleasure of being a part of, there's one in particular that's a little extra special, and that is No More Color Lines. My producer / husband, the two of us wrote this song having no idea what impact we could make that would speak to the lack of inclusion or diversity in the world, because what if we could really erase the hatred that comes with people not appreciating other people's cultures and races? You know what I mean? What if we could be so much more powerful as women and men using our differences to our advantage? I mean, it's a great goal to strive for. So having the acceptance of other cultures that is completely different, other practices, other religions, other foods that are different from what you know, and especially as a woman or anybody. Well, listen, stay encouraged, be well, and get a chance to make impact with your lives. Just make the decision to do so.
Imagine no more color lines. Imagine no more reasons why you can't do anything you've tried. Don't give up on you. Imagine your dreams coming true. Imagine a world where no one has color for skin. Imagine a place where everyone only stands to win. Some of us call our world a peaceful place. If you could go back, think of everything you changed. Imagine no more color lines. Oh, imagine no more reasons why you can do anything you try. Don't give up on you. Imagine your dreams coming true. It's so easy for you to jump to the wrong conclusion. Imagine if your first thought was to find a resolution. Some of us think we can't change anything, but if you could do it differently, what choices would you make? No more color lines. You can do anything you try. Don't give up now. Imagine your dreams. Imagine we're breaking down barriers. Not one reason why you try. Don't give up on you. Imagine your dreams coming true. Imagine if at the drop of a hat you could turn back, start each day all over again. Every day that you wake, you can make a choice to love anyway, in spite of all